Welcome everybody. I would like to say first and foremost, thank you for checking out my video today. And if you would like to see more Counter-Strike Global Offensive content in the future, if you enjoy the video, go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel. My content is free, always will be free. The best thing that you can do to support me, like I said, subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments what content you would like to see in the future. A lot of the content that I produce is because of comments either on Reddit, Facebook, YouTube. People generate ideas and let me know what they would like to see, and that's the content that I want to produce, the content that is going to be the most helpful for you. So we're going to jump right into it. Today we're going to be going over what is warming up, what is practicing, what's the difference between the two? Is there even really a difference? Because I've heard that debate before too. So the first thing that we're going to do is define what warming up is to us. I think that is an individual opinion. This entire video is going to be an opinion piece. Like, what is warming up? What is practicing? What are those definitions to us? Right? I'll give you my definitions. I'll give you my reasoning why, and I'll give you my practice routines, both for warming up and for practicing. Now, it's not to say that this is necessarily law. You can have 1,000 different ways to warm up and 1,000 different ways to practice, and millions of combinations between the two. And really what a lot of it comes down to is reflecting on what you are good at as a Counter-Strike player and what your opportunities are, right? Like what you need to improve on. That's really going to define what you need to do while you're warming up and while you're practicing, right? We're all focused on the same thing, no matter what way or what method we're going about doing it, is becoming a better Counter-Strike player and becoming a more consistent Counter-Strike player long term, right? So we're going to jump right into it, guys, and we're going to define what warming up is first. Then we're going to define what practicing is, and then I'll give you my warm-up routines and my practice routines and my reasoning why I have these routines specifically. So let's jump right into it, guys. So in preparation for this video, I took a few notes breaking down what is warming up, what is practicing, trying to find a definition, really trying to break it down to its core, to its basics, right? To figure out what these things are to me. So I will give you my definition of warming up first. We'll go over exactly what I think that is first, and after that, we'll go over practicing. So the definition that I came up for warming up is the repeated execution of common actions in Counter-Strike Global Offensive. I'll repeat that one more time. Warming up is the repeated execution of common actions in Counter-Strike Global Offensive. Now, along with that definition, I came up with a few examples, right? So, flicking the targets, player models, right? Just one mouse movement. You're not doing anything else. You're just flicking, right? Moving your mouse. Just trying to gauge how far I need to move my mouse on my mouse pad to reach a specific point, right? Aim tracking. So that's kind of the inverse, right? I'm doing AD, just strafing left to right and trying to hold my crosshair in the same exact position. That's more of a complex action. It's two pieces. Instead of just moving your mouse, you're also moving your mouse and your keyboard, so you have to be paying attention to multiple things at one time. But I still think that it's a very common action and is something that you should be able to do consistently as a decent Counter-Strike player. Other things include recoil control with common weapons, so the AK-47 and both M4s, and now the meta is not really the AUG anymore, but the Krieg at this point in time, so you should know the recoil patterns of those 5 weapons at the very basic to be considered a decent Counter-Strike player. I think that everybody should know that, should be able to control those weapons with relative ease, right? Pre-aiming, pre-firing, map smokes, flashes, Molotovs. You should be practicing your map smokes, different ones on different maps, just to keep it fresh. Make sure that you know those smokes in the event that you need to use that smoke or it's going to be useful. If it's going to win you a round, you should be able to know that smoke. You should be able to know that Molotov, flashbang, whatever that is. And pre-aiming, pre-firing, so just knowing how high the head is going to be at certain angles in different maps. It's just basic map knowledge. Flicking with the scout and the op, if applicable. That's pretty much the same thing as just flicking the target's player models, except inside of the scope, the zoom sensitivity, it's going to be a little bit different. That sensitivity is going to be different unless you have changed the ratio to be the same, right? So that's what I would consider warming up. And they're just basic things that you need to do in Counter-Strike Global Offensive. Now, how this differs from practicing, we're going to jump right into that right now, guys. Okay, so the way that I have defined practicing in Counter-Strike Global Offensive is this. Practicing is the execution and eventual integration of high-level complex actions. I'll say that one more time. Practicing is the execution and eventual integration of high-level complex actions. What does that really mean? This differs from warming up in the sense that warming up is very basic. Like, everybody should be able to do the things that I went over whenever you're warming up. Those are things that you should be able to do consistently that are necessary for you to be a decent Counter-Strike player overall. Practicing, you should be working on integrating harder things into your gameplay. It's a continuous evolution as a Counter-Strike player. Now, what do these things include, at least in my opinion? These things could include like stutter stepping while tapping. So AD quickly enough. If you move AD quickly enough, strafing back and forth, you can remain not moving in the game, but still firing straight. Like, you're still moving, but the game thinks you're standing still because you're moving fast enough. It makes you a harder target to hit, right? Counter strafing while bursting, spraying. So you're holding A, and you see somebody pop out, and you got to hold D to stop yourself and be able to burst or spray the target down. You will stop quicker if you hit the opposite key of what you're strafing. So if you're strafing left with A and you hit D, you're going to stop faster than if you just release A. So practicing something like that, right? Recoil control with less common weapons. So those 5 weapons that I mentioned earlier, both M4s, the AK-47, the Kree, and the AUG, like it's bought often enough. It's a common enough weapon still, at least in my experience, as of this moment right now, that you should be able to do that. But practicing spraying with like the MAC-10 or the MP9, you know, like eco weapons, the Galil, the FAMAS, those are going to be things that are going to help you in the long run. So if you pick up that weapon and you can control that weapon better than most people, you're going to get more kills, you're going to win more rounds. Eventually you're going to win more games if you win more rounds, you know. Flicking and spraying as one fluid motion. So when you're warming up, yeah, you should just be flicking the targets, just getting the mouse movement itself. But whenever you're practicing flicking and spraying, so you flick up to the target and you start shooting and continue your spray pattern. That's a much higher complex action than just simply flicking to a target. And if you think about it, if you're just sitting in like an aim workshop map, like aim training CSGO, and you're flicking to a target and you just shoot one bullet, that's not really realistic inside of the game. Most of the time you are going to be flicking and then spraying a target down, right? You're going to need to fire more than one bullet. If you can just flick and get headshots like Scream all day, then don't worry about this. That doesn't apply to you. But most of us cannot do that. So that's something that you need to practice. Map spokes, flashbangs, Molotovs, again, you should still be practicing. I think you should integrate that into a practice routine. Demo reviews and analysis. That's important just to understand where your opportunities are. So recognizing the mistakes that you made inside of a game and what led to you dying in a round, or maybe you just had a bad game and you're trying to review exactly what went wrong. That's an important part of growing as a player and recognizing what you did wrong and how you can improve, right? 180 flicks, you should be able, if somebody's behind you and they shoot, you should be able to turn around as fast as possible and be able to at least get in their general vicinity. It's not really realistic that you're going to be able to 180 flick and kill everybody that's behind you, but you should be able to have enough skill or have enough practice inside of that sphere to have a fighting chance, essentially, right? Wide peeking and crouch spraying as one motion. A lot of people will not expect a wide peek coming out, and they won't expect you to just then crouch and spray at the same time, right? So it's a less common thing that you'll need to do, but it's also something that's very useful in your arsenal if you can become very good at it, right? So now we'll go over like what is a warm-up routine and what is a practice routine. We're gonna jump right into that right now, guys. So what exactly is a warm-up routine? What is a practice routine? That's a very individual concept. That's something that I believe you need to develop for yourself. You can copy somebody else's warm-up routine or somebody else's practice routine. I do think that you should make individual adjustments as well. But it is something, if you needed a foundation, you didn't really know where to start, you could use mine, you could use like a professional player's, like whatever you want to do. What a warm-up routine essentially is practicing those basic functions. So what I usually recommend is going inside of an aim training map to begin, right? You'll go into aim training CSGO 2 is what I do. I start off with 100 targets at a 0.5 second static target duration with a 0.25 second target delay. And I will shoot 300 targets, 400 targets with just a USP. Just flicking to targets, getting used to moving my mouse and understanding how far I need to move my mouse for my crosshair to move a certain distance across the screen. Once you're finished with that, you should get into a recoil control map. Recoil Master is obviously the favorite here, and that's what I would recommend. And practicing those 5 basic weapons. In a warm-up routine, I think that you shouldn't be practicing like multiple different weapons beyond the 5 basic ones that we went over, the AKs, the M4s, Krieg, AUG. I don't think that you should be practicing like the SMGs or the less common weapons. That's up to you. That's not what I recommend. I think it confuses muscle memory. That's more for a practice routine, right? After you're finished with a Recoil Master, I do think that you should go into some sort of bot map or a deathmatch map. It's great to be able to understand how far you're moving your mouse, how far you're flicking to targets, but shooting player models is a totally different thing, and you want to be able to integrate movement into the entire equation as well. So whenever you jump into a deathmatch map, you're not just flicking, you're not just moving your mouse, you're not just spraying and standing still. You have to integrate movement into this map or into the into your practice routine. Once you're finished with that, I think that you've covered most of the basic things that you need to do. That's the most basic practice or the most basic warm-up routine that I can give you. That's a good foundation to start from, but I do think that you should recognize your own individual opportunities. Like if you're not great at movement, maybe you should spend more time in a deathmatch and less time in like an aim training server or in like a workshop map, because you need to work on your movement a little bit more and you need to focus on that more, right? So this is really about you recognizing where your opportunities lie and being able to create a routine that is focused around that is personalized, right? And right now we're going to jump into what is a practice routine? Like what's the point of it? How long should I be doing it? For your warm-up routine, I think that you should do it just about every time you play. If you only have like a little bit of time and you want to play a game or you're not really feeling it, like that's okay. You know, we've all done it before. We've all jumped into a game without warming up. I do think that you should spend about 20 minutes warming up prior to jumping into a competitive match. Whether you're playing matchmaking, ESEA, FACEIT, spend about 20 minutes. That's probably good. I wouldn't spend longer than 45 minutes to an hour in like warming up. At that point, I don't think that you're really doing yourself any favors. But, you know, everybody's a little bit different, so decide what you need. You might only need 10 or 15 minutes to feel warmed up. I think 20 to 30 is perfect. But we'll jump into practicing and exactly what that looks like, how long we should be doing it, and how often we should be doing it. So for a practice routine, you can utilize a lot of the same maps and a lot of the same resources that you would do while warming up, but you're going to be focused on different things, right? You're going to be focused more on your movement, like stutter stepping, using AD quickly and being able to tap, being able to burst, not really focused on spraying as much or controlling your recoil, but really controlling your mouse and controlling your movement at the same time to be able to become a better Counter-Strike player. This is also where I would practice counter strafing. So you can spend time inside of deathmatch servers, specifically like headshot deathmatch servers. That's probably the best for counter strafing and stutter stepping, to be able to practice your tapping, to be able to practice your headshots. I wouldn't spend too much time in headshot servers, however. I do believe that people move differently and people act differently, so it's not necessarily, even though everybody's aiming for the head, it's not necessarily a good representation of how people are actually going to be playing or how they're going to be moving inside of a game. So it kind of takes away that aspect. It loses some of its authenticity, in my opinion. Now, other things that you can be doing as well, you can be playing retake servers. So if you like to be an opper, for example, you can be playing retakes, because generally on a retake, you don't want to have an op. The op isn't the best weapon to have on a retake. Now, you can always pick up an AK, but sometimes you're forced to use that op, right? So focusing on being able to retake sites, or being able to get the frags where you need to get the frags with the op on retakes, that's an important thing that you can be practicing. Watching your demo reviews, even though this is more of a passive activity, you are recognizing your opportunities and you're recognizing what you could be practicing in the future, what you could be dedicating your other time to, right? Or what you could be using to warm up. Like maybe you recognize that you aren't as good at some of the basic functions like flicking, or maybe your recoil could use and control could use a little work. So just recognizing where your opportunities are. The practice routine is going to be very individualized, and this is where you need to have some self-reflection. You need to be able to audit yourself as a player and be able to recognize what things you really need to work on. But I do think that most of your time should be dedicated to the higher level complex actions that we were talking about a little bit earlier, like stutter stepping, like bursting, spraying, wide peeking and crouch spraying, flicking and then spraying at the same time as one fluid motion, and trying to integrate that into your game little by little. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. It's something that you want to be continuously working on so that it becomes something that feels very natural over a period of time after doing it for so long, right? That's the eventual goal. And by integrating like higher level complex things into your gameplay, you are going to be a better Counter-Strike player overall. You're going to get more kills, get more round wins, which is going to lead to more game wins, eventually ranking up. I don't like to focus on rank as much as I do individual skill and individual development. Rank is just a nice flashy little emblem, or in ESEA like a letter score that shows how much you win. That's fine and dandy and everything, but you want to be able to focus on how well you're doing as an individual player. That's a much better representation of how good at the game you are, in my opinion. So those are things that you want to be focused on, especially when it comes to warming up versus practicing. I think with practicing, you should be focused on doing it about maybe once a week if you're feeling really ambitious, twice a week, and I would dedicate about an hour to it. So this would come after you were done warming up and you're done practicing like basic functions for about 20-30 minutes, whatever you dedicate to warming up, and then integrate a practice routine and try to integrate different things into this practice routine as you master things along the way, right? So spend about an hour once, twice a week, depending on how much you play. It could even be once every bi-weekly, twice a month kind of thing. But over time, you will recognize that you are becoming a better player, and that those higher level functions or those higher level actions that seemed really complex and kind of confused your muscles at first, or it didn't feel natural to be able to do, you'll recognize that those things become easier over time. But like I said, take some time. I think it's really important for you to be able to audit yourself and to be able to understand where your opportunities lie. Alright guys, so that's my opinion on the difference between warming up and practicing, how often you should be warming up, and how long you should be warming up, what kinds of things you can be doing while warming up, and what a routine is while warming up. And the same thing goes for practicing, how often you should be doing it, what things you should be focused on, and the best ways to practice. And a lot of it does come down to individual gameplay or individual opportunities. This is an opinion piece. This is by no means law. There could be 100 different opinions on this topic, and there's probably many more opinions than that. But that's my opinion on these subjects and the overall ways that you can utilize your time to be able to become a better Counter-Strike player, because that's the overall goal, right? So like I said at the beginning of the video, if you did enjoy this video, go ahead and subscribe to my channel if you would like to see future Counter-Strike Global Offensive content. My content is free, always will be. That's the best way that you can support my channel and support me as a YouTuber. And if you would like to also drop a comment and say like what kinds of content you would like to see in the future, what things you would like me to go over, maybe something you don't understand or something that you would just like my opinion on. Thanks for watching, everybody. I really appreciate it. I hope you have a great day. Happy fragging.